You guys ready? We're starting a new series this morning. It's on forgiveness. Matt and I have been having some different conversations with each other and with some of you, and it seems that this next season in the life of the Watershed really needs to be one that's focused on forgiveness. And so each week, as we're here, it's going to cover a major myth about forgiveness. We're going to start with what forgiveness is not, or misconceptions about forgiveness, so we can get a better understanding of what forgiveness really is. I'm not going to lie to you, this is hard. Forgiveness is hard to talk about. It's something I think that we as Christians are quick to discuss and slow to act on sometimes. And so it's hard to talk about it. It's hard to preach about, but we're going to do it this morning. The great thing about preaching on forgiveness is even if I blow it this morning, you got to forgive me. So the joke's really on you guys, right? I'm just kidding. Let's go ahead and pray. Father, we thank you so much that you are a God of forgiveness, that you don't look at who we were, but you look at what we can be. God, today as we talk about you, we talk about your word, we ask that you would speak through me or move me out of the way. We just want to hear from you today, God. Thank you for all that you're doing. Thank you for you. We love you so much. It's in your son's name we pray. Amen. Before we go any farther, I want to introduce you guys to someone special to me. We met about 4 years ago, and I got to start with this. I'm no believer in love at first sight, but when I met her, I knew that I would never be able to live without her again. I want to tell you a little bit about her. She's got blonde hair, and she's got brown eyes, and just this loving personality. And when she wags her tail, my heart just melts a little bit. We've got a picture of her. This is my dog. She's a little nearsighted. You'll have to apologize for the glasses. This is Crouton. This is my dog. Her name's Crouton, like the delicious salad accessory. And Crouton's the greatest dog in the history of the entire world. I say that she's a dog because she is a dog. We're going deep this morning, so bear with me. Crouton is a dog, and I was thinking about this earlier this week. There was a time, I imagine, when I didn't know what a dog was. Somebody had to teach me what a dog was, and so somebody, probably my parents, came along and said, well, you know, a dog has 4 legs and is furry and has a tail and often lives in people's homes. It seemed pretty simple. I could follow that easy enough. And so anytime I came along a creature that was furry or had 4 legs or had a tail, I would say dog, right? So dog, no, Michael, that's a hamster, right? Or dog, no, Michael, that's a cat. Or dog, no, Michael, that's your little sister. She doesn't have a tail. Don't worry, we just got to clarify that. But I'm proud to say that today I can distinguish between a dog and a hamster pretty well. But by learning what a dog wasn't, I was better able to understand what a dog was. By learning what a dog wasn't, not a hamster, not a cat, I was able to better understand what a dog was. That's how we're going to tackle forgiveness this morning. We're going to look at 2 different myths that appear to line up with the definition of forgiveness. 2 things that often get confused with what forgiveness is. We're going to very clearly say that those are not forgiveness, and by doing so, better come to understand what forgiveness really is. This morning, we're going to say that forgiveness is not the same thing as condoning, which would be accepting what the other person did. And we're also going to say that forgiveness is not the same thing as forgetting. 2 common things that get mixed up, condoning and forgetting. My message this morning, if we can go back to the title slide, is He Saw Esau Seesaw. You're welcome. I thought that was awesome. You can say it if you want to a couple times, because it's fun to say. He saw Esau seesaw. The even better thing about this is that it actually means something. It doesn't just rhyme, it sounds. That doesn't always happen with sermon titles. But what it means is he, Jacob, Esau's brother, witnessed Esau, his brother, Seesaw, move from a place of resentment and anger to a place of compassion and forgiveness. We're talking about Jacob and Esau. He saw Esau seesaw. Boom. If you didn't get that, we're going to just keep going, so don't worry about it. As I said, we're going to use the story of Jacob and Esau this morning to try and debunk some of these myths. Jacob and Esau is a story of family struggles, of some crazy family members. Do any of you guys have any crazy family members? Maybe some people, that aunt or that uncle you don't talk about outside of family gatherings. Some of you are probably having a hard time thinking about somebody, and I'm going to warn you, that probably means that you're the crazy family member if you can't think of somebody. Every family's got one. And so if you can't think of, just think about that for a little bit. Anyway, let's get back to our story. We're going to set the stage a little bit. Jacob and Esau are brothers, right? They're twins. And their relationship, even before they're born, starts out kind of rocky. Genesis tells us that the babies jostled each other inside of their mother's womb. When we pick up the story in chapter 27, we find that Isaac, who is Jacob and Esau's father, is getting old. He doesn't know when he's going to die, and so he wants to call in his oldest son and give him a blessing. The concept of blessing may be kind of hard for us to understand. We don't really do it the same way these days, but a blessing was a really, really big deal. Oral statements like these deathbed bequests carried legal weight in the near ancient law. And so what Isaac says to, supposed to be to Esau, carries some serious weight to it. This is a big deal, this blessing. So Isaac calls in Esau and says, go out and catch some food and come back and I'm going to bless you because I can't be blessing on an empty stomach. And so while all of this is going on, Rebekah, and this is Isaac's wife, this is Jacob and Esau's mother, starts eavesdropping on the conversation. And she gets this idea, and she goes to her son Jacob and says, Jacob, we're going to dress you up, and you're going to go in, and you're going to receive the blessing that was reserved for Esau. Scandalous. Isaac's eyes are bad, and so her plan might work. Like I said, we're going to pick up the story in chapter 27. We're going to start with verses 18 to 30. Let's read this. He, Jacob, went to his father and said, my father. Yes, my son, he answered. Who is it? Jacob said to his father, I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Please sit up and eat some of my game so that you may give me your blessing. Isaac asked his son, how did you find it so quickly, my son? The Lord your God gave me success, he replied. Then Isaac said to Jacob, come near so I can touch you, my son, to know whether you are really my son Esau or not. Jacob went close to his father Isaac, who touched him and said, the voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau. He did not recognize him, for his hands were hairy like those of his brother Esau. Time out. If people can recognize you by the hair on your hands, you need to get that checked out. That's nasty. That's nasty. Let's keep going. So he proceeded to bless him. Are you really my son Esau, he asked. I am, he said. Then he said, my son, bring me some of your game to eat so that I may give you my blessing. Jacob brought it to him, and he ate. And he brought some wine, and he drank. Then his father Isaac said to him, come here, my son, and kiss me. So he went into him and kissed him. When Isaac caught the smell of his clothes, he blessed him and said, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you heaven's dew and earth's richness, an abundance of grain and new wine. May nations serve you and peoples bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers. And may the sons of your mother bow down to you. May those who curse you be cursed and those who bless you be blessed. After Isaac finished blessing him, and Jacob had scarcely left his father's presence, his brother Esau came in from hunting. In our story, Esau is wronged. It's pretty clear. There's no way around it. Jacob, through lying and through deception, has taken the blessing that rightfully belonged to Esau. And it hurts. It stings. This week I was thinking and I was wondering, what is it that hurts so much about being wronged? What is it that hurts so much when somebody insults us? And it's not simply that wrongdoings threaten or produce physical violence or psychological damage. It's not simply that wrongdoings threaten our careers or our families or our interests. Because all those things can happen naturally or by accident. And when they happen naturally or by accident, we don't have the same feelings as when somebody does it to us. When someone wrongs another, what happens is you send a message to your victim saying that I matter and you don't. And that message hurts and bothers us. When you're wronged, the wrongdoer says, I count, but you don't. I can use you for my purposes. I am up here, and you are down here. This is the message that Jacob sent to his brother Esau. And this is where our first myth often creeps in with forgiveness. A lot of times in my life, I've been hesitant to forgive somebody because I'm afraid that if I do, I will implicitly be saying what they did was okay. That if I forgive them, somehow I will send a message that the wrong that they committed to me was excusable or justified or even deserved. This morning, I want to tell you that you don't have to do that when you forgive. When he told you that you didn't matter, he was wrong. And when she used you for her personal gain, she was wrong. And when they said you would never be anything, they were wrong. When Jacob told Esau that he didn't matter, that he wasn't even deserving of the blessing of his father, he was wrong. This is the first step towards forgiveness. We don't usually think of forgiveness starting here, but it has to. Forgiveness requires acknowledging that when the person tried to lower your value and your worth, they were wrong. I want to show you something real quick. I meant to get a 20 on the way here, but I was running a little late, so we're just going to use $1, but pretend this is a $20 or $100 bill. I'm not going to give it to you, but I'm going to pretend. If I were to hand you this dollar, would any of you accept this? If I handed you this dollar, would you could buy a Coke or you could go to Buc-ee's across the street, you would accept it? Yes? What if I put a big crease down the middle of it? It's not as clean as it was before. It's got this big crease. Would you still accept my dollar? Yes? What if I crumbled it up like this and handed it? Would you still accept the dollar? Or if I put it on the ground and stomped on it? Would you still accept my dollar? You would? Alan. Alan's a high roller, so... I think a lot of people would accept my dollar still, and the reason that you would is because the value of this dollar bill doesn't come from what has been done to it. It doesn't matter what the dollar bill looks like on the outside. It doesn't matter that it has a few creases, that it's been beat up or washed in the laundry. The value of this dollar bill comes from somewhere else. Somebody else tells this dollar bill that it's worth $1. This morning, I want you to know that your value doesn't come from what somebody else has done to you. You don't have to be defined by the wrongs that were committed to you. In the beginning of Genesis, when God's making humans, we're told that he made them in his own image. And I don't know if that means we look like God or not, but it does mean that God cares about us a whole lot. And that our identity and the definition of who we are doesn't come from what other people do to us. But our value comes from another place. It comes from God himself. Esau is able to understand that. He's able to understand that the wrong that Jacob committed to him doesn't have to lower his standing. He doesn't have to lower his worth. And he responds to his brother in verses 32 through 34. We can get that up on the screen. Verse 32 starts, his father Isaac asked him, "Who are you?" "I am your son," he answered, "your firstborn Esau." Isaac trembled violently and said, "Who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me? I ate it just before you came, and I blessed him. And indeed, he will be blessed." When Esau heard his father's words, he burst out with a loud and bitter cry and said to his father, "Bless me too, Father." In this section, we see Esau beginning to grieve. He bursts out into tears, and this is where forgiveness begins. This is important. I want to read you something that Donald Miller, he wrote Blue Like Jazz and a couple other books. He's a really neat guy. He said this about forgiveness. He said, "Go through the stages of grief. Let the offense shock you. Then let it completely hurt you. Don't avoid the pain. Sit with it and feel it no matter how unbearable it is. But please know that it will end in time. Just feel it like a toothache, and soon enough, it will transition into something better." Miller even goes on to say, after we've grieved, that we should let the offense make us angry. He writes, "Don't lash out or you'll be guilty yourself. Talk about it with trusted friends, but confess you're angry and your emotions aren't under control. And don't feel bad about being angry. The last thing you need is anger and shame. The anger, like the pain, will lessen over time. We just saw Esau grieve, and like Miller suggested, he moves on to this anger. He gets angry at Jacob. Verse 41 reads, Esau held a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing his father had given him. He said to himself, the days of mourning for my father are near. Then I will kill my brother Jacob. But I got to clarify, it's okay to get angry. It's not okay to threaten to kill the people that did you wrong. If you go out of here saying that, Matt's not going to be really happy with me. Don't go threaten to kill people. Esau gets a little carried away, but we'll forgive him. That was a joke too, sorry. The point is simply this: forgiveness does not mean that you have to condone or approve of your wrongdoer's actions. As you grieve and you get angry about what someone did to you, you reject the message that they sent saying that you don't matter. And you reclaim the identity that God gave you, being made as a child of God. You reclaim your confidence in your own self-worth. Forgiveness does not mean condoning. Get upset. It's necessary. And it's the first step towards forgiveness. I want to be careful that I say it's the first step towards forgiveness because there's more to it than just getting angry. There's a tendency to stay here, to stay sad, and to stay angry. And if you do that, you still haven't forgiven yet. And this is where the second myth of forgiveness can often creep in. Our first myth was that forgiveness means condoning. Our second myth says that forgiveness simply means forgetting. I've developed a bad habit over the last couple of years. Some people bite their nails or some people chew with their mouth open. I have a tendency to invite homeless people to live in my back bedroom, which is a terrible habit. And as they come in, I've had the blessing to meet a couple of really cool guys. And the last two guys that have stayed with me were both addicts. One was an alcoholic and one was a drug addict. They're both still addicts and they always will be, but they don't use. They choose not to use right now. They're really cool guys. And they're really good musicians, which is fun because I like to play music and they do. And one plays piano, one plays guitar. It's really awesome. Both of my friends went through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous. Some of you may be familiar with these 12 steps. Others of you may not be. I'm going to read you the first 3 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, of the 12-step program. Step number 1 says that we admitted to ourselves that we were powerless over drugs and alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Step 2 is that we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Step 3 is that we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. These first 3 steps are pretty straightforward. But the 4th step is where things get really tricky for those going through the AA program. And they got tricky for these 2 friends of mine. Most addicts have a really hard time with step 4. Here's what step 4 says. It says, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. That probably doesn't mean a lot to you, but as you're going through step 4, what you have to do is you have to make a couple of different lists about yourself. You write down these lists, and these lists are your fears, they're your harms, they're your faults. But most importantly, these lists include your resentments towards other people. You see how this is parallel to what we talked about earlier? My 2 friends recognized that they had been wronged by other people, and they were upset about it. We said that was okay because they refused to condone the actions that other people had done to them. But their responses coming out of step 4 were very different. One of my friends just stopped altogether. He quit the 12 steps at number 4. Digging up the past made him angry. Remembering his resentments made him angry. And he decided just to forget the whole thing. The pain and the anger were too much for him. His solution was to just forget. You see, the problem with forgetting is you can't do it very easily. Focusing on forgetting really only leads to suppressed feelings and emotions. That's not the same thing as forgiveness. Forgiveness takes place when you can remember the wrong that was done to you without feeling the resentment or without feeling that desire to pursue revenge. I would often have conversations with my friend. I love hearing people's stories, and I love taking that time to talk. And as we got to know each other better, we would sit on my back porch and talk about his life. And as we would start talking about his life, he would remember where he had been and these things that had happened to him. And he would have to stop telling his story. And to this day, I've never heard his full story because he can't tell it without the anger just taking over him. We always started back at square one. Forgetting really only suppresses emotions. It's not the same as forgiveness. I will say that sometimes after you've forgiven somebody, you forget what they've done to you because you've changed that relationship. But you don't have to forget in order to forgive. Forgetting is not a substitute for forgiveness. My other friend, a homeless guy, number 2, he finished all the 12 steps. And when you ask him about his past, he's happy to tell you about it. Because he made it past step 4, my friend can openly and honestly talk about his past. He can talk about his resentments because he doesn't resent them anymore. He's had a shift in his perspective. He's had a change in his heart. And that, my friends, is the key to forgiveness. Donald Miller, who we mentioned earlier, talks about this step too, about grieving and getting angry and this change of heart. What he says to sit and pray for the person you've been hating. Sit and imagine them with a good life. Imagine them coming to realize that what they did was wrong. Maybe not to you, maybe to somebody, or maybe to God. And then be willing to love them in your heart. Want the best for them. Hope the best for them. Stop praying for God to destroy them and pray for God to bless them. Pray for God to open up their hearts so they can receive the love that will stop them from hurting other people. You have to start with grief and anger so you don't condone the wrongdoer's actions, but you can't stay there. Once you've gotten angry, you can't focus on forgetting the anger either because you'll still find yourself angry down the road years later. You have to shift your perspective so that your desire to do harm to that person goes away and your desire for them to do good, to see them blessed, increases. That's forgiveness, this change of heart. Let's get back to Jacob and Esau. They end up meeting again in chapter 33. Only this time Esau has 400 guys with him. Look around you right now. This room was designed to seat about 250 people. Okay, so take this room and add another 150, and we're Esau and his 400 guys that are coming up on his brother. They haven't seen each other since Esau got really angry and threatened to kill Jacob. Jacob's a little freaked out, as you can imagine. Let's see what happens in verses 1 through 11. Jacob looked up, and there was Esau coming with 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the 2 female servants. He put the female servants and their children in front, Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph in the rear. He himself went on ahead and bowed down to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. But Esau ran to meet Jacob and embraced him. He threw his arms around his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Then Esau looked up and saw the women and the children. "Who are these with you?" he asked. Jacob answered, They are the children God has graciously given your servant." Then the female servants and their children approached and bowed down. Next, Leah and her children came and bowed down. Last of all, Joseph and Rachel, and they too bowed down. Esau asked, "What's the meaning of all these flocks and herds I met? Before we got here, Jacob had sent all of these animals, lots and lots of animals, to try and cool his brother down." So Esau asked, "What's the meaning of all these flocks and herds I met?" "To find favor in your eyes, my lord," he said. But Esau said, "I have plenty already, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself." "No, please," said Jacob, "if I have found favor in your eyes, accept this gift from me. For to see your face is like seeing the face of God, now that you have received me favorably. Please accept the present that was brought to you, for God has been gracious to me, and I have all I need." And because Jacob insisted, Esau accepted it. At the end of chapter 27, we left an angry Esau who was threatening to kill his brother. But it's clear that he didn't stay angry. And his anger didn't just subside because he forgot about everything. When Esau came across his brother Jacob, surely all of these memories of what had happened there in the room with Isaac came flooding back into him. Had he simply forgotten his anger and remembered it at that moment, Jacob could have been in a bad situation with those 400 guys, and Esau could have done something terrible that he regretted. Instead, he does something else. I want to read verse 4 one more time. But Esau ran to meet Jacob and embraced him. He threw his arms around his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Esau didn't simply forget his brother. Instead, he had a change of heart. And that change of heart shifted their relationship. They no longer existed as wrongdoer and victim. But now Jacob and Esau existed as brother and brother. I want to end with one story. It's a story that comes from Belize. It's a good story. You're not going to believe it. That was bad, I'm sorry. The rainforests of Belize aren't an easy place to farm. Farmers there have to work really hard to till the soil because it's so poorly nourished. Most agricultural fertility is locked in the huge leaves of the green canopy in the rainforest. And so the leaves never fall, the sun never gets to the ground, and it leaves the soil rocky and hard to till. And any leaves that do fall get carried away by scurrying ants. Their farming is an uphill battle. They irrigate their crops with precious water dripping from pinholes and hoses running along their rows of carrots and lettuce and other greens. They travel by way of horses, and they use the horses to run their sawmill. They don't have much, and they don't really need much. Their hard work and their cooperative work and their skills are their wealth. But nevertheless, armed bandits at times come into their village, and they steal what little money they have. A robber recently came into their community while they were gone. He broke into their houses, and he took all their money. The police found the man, and they put him in prison. And in response, this little farming community in the rainforest of Belize did two things. The first thing they did is they printed their own money that was useless anywhere except in that village. And it removed any incentive for robbers to come in and steal from them. The second thing they did was when the robber was released from prison, they found him and they built him a house. The villagers were angered by the actions of the robber, so they changed their money so it wouldn't happen again. But they didn't stay angry. They had a change of heart. And it shifted their relationship with this robber from victim and wrongdoer to now neighbor and friend and family member. My hope is that we can open our hearts to that same kind of radical forgiveness that we see in Belize, that we see in Esau. The world's really counting on it. Would you guys pray with me? Father, forgiveness can be hard. We're so thankful that you forgive us, because I'm sure that can be hard too. God, help us today to first remember how you see us, to find our worth and our value not in the actions of other people, but in your words. God, help us to not accept injustice and to work to remove it. And help us to have a change of heart with those who have wronged us. Not simply to forget what they did, but to come to a place where we can restore our relationship with that person. It's hard work, God, and we can't do it by ourselves. We need your help. Thank you for who you are, for loving us even when we mess up, and for giving us the strength to do what seems impossible. In your son's name we pray.